Okay, so there's this new card coming out tomorrow called Alba System Dogmatic Calamity, and it's for branded. So I wanted to make a short video just talking about this. I've already talked about it once in my brief guide back in January, but I wanted to just talk about it again because it's obviously finally coming to Master Duel. I'm not going to change my opinion on this. If you did see that guide, this card is still bad. You do not want to play this. This is not a good card. What this does, if you haven't seen it before, I guess I will disappear real quick so you can read the effect. It says that it must be fusion summoned, it can attack all monsters once, and it can't declare an attack unless you send a card from your extra deck to the graveyard. And then also once per turn as an ignition effect, if you control this card, and you have 6 or more fusion monsters in your graveyard with different names that mention Fallen of Alba as material, you can send all cards in the extra decks to the graveyard. So this is not a good card because the materials required to summon this are very intensive. Not as intensive as they sound, but still pretty intensive. You can't just summon this with Branded Fusion. You can't just summon this with Branded Fusion into Lubellion. You pretty much need to have been playing for basically a whole game already, and then you need to summon this on the follow-up, right? Like turn 3, to have 6 monsters in the graveyard, that either requires you to have resolved Grass, or it requires you to have played like a whole turn, right? And then doing this on the follow-up. You could theoretically get it pretty easily going second as well, but the payoff is not great, right? Attacking all monsters, even with a giant body like this, is not necessarily that powerful. It's not exactly a board breaker. Alba Lenitus already attacks everything, and that card is never ever summoned outside of its contact fusion effect. So yeah, this card is not going to be good for breaking a board. The effect, it says here to have 6 or more monsters that mention Albaz in the graveyard, fusion monsters, means that you basically have to have every Albaz fusion. If we look at the Albaz fusions, you need to have Titaniclad, you're gonna need to have, let me find Albaz. You're gonna need to have Titaniclad, Albion, Mirajade, Lubellion, Rinbrum, Sanctifier, add like Alba Lenitus, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then like one of these that you don't necessarily even play. The Sanctifier is not in every deck list. Alba Lenitus is not in every deck list. Sprint is not in every deck list. And this is obviously in 0 deck lists. This does not count as an Albaz fusion, even though it mentions it. It has to be as material. Lubellion is very often not in your graveyard. You don't really want it in your graveyard. So this effect is honestly not likely to come up super often, right? Remember, they have to have different names, so you really do have to have all of them in rotation. And the payoff for sending every card in your opponent's extra deck to the graveyard, it's not even that crazy when you also have to send all of yours, which, you know, Branded likes sending cards from its extra deck to the graveyard, but it doesn't like sending all of it to the graveyard, you know? Like, if you've ever played against Dogmatica, you'll know that you appreciate having 1 or 2 cards sent by Maximus, but once they start triggering the big ritual and the continuous, and they send like 7 or 8 cards from your extra deck to the graveyard, it starts getting a little suspicious, right? You don't actually want to have no extra deck, because you're a fusion deck, you want to summon. So why would you really even want to empty your own extra deck? It's not even that effective, right? And then this effect, this is the only good part of the effect, the one that says cannot declare an attack unless you send a card. So this is the part that's actually relatively okay, where you attack with this, you send a card, attack again, send another card. You can send things like Aurora and Entis. It doesn't just have to be Albaz fusions, but you can send the Albaz fusions as well, and that's pretty good. That is pretty good. But overall, the material required to summon it and the space that it takes in the extra deck is just not worth it. You just don't want to play this. So I guess I don't need to elaborate any further than that. The only thing I would say is that if you were going to play this, probably wouldn't be in regular branded. I would probably think about playing like a turbo build that wants to build a deck appropriately, where you actually have some really interesting cards in the extra deck to send to the graveyard with this, like Entis, for example, maybe some Herald of the Arclight stuff, I don't know. I would have to cook. If anybody has any decklist ideas for how to build this, feel free to tell me. But it definitely does not have a place in regular branded, so don't be tricked into playing this. Don't be tricked by any like YouTuber clickbait with this in the thumbnail telling you like crazy new branded deck. No, this is not it. The branded Fusion to 2 is a crazy buff, but this is not a buff. This is nothing. So ignore this card. You don't need to read this. You don't need to care about it. That's basically it. That's all I wanted to say. This video doesn't need to be very long, so that'll do it. Thanks for watching.